think probably for me one of the most exciting bands that I've been working with over the last couple of years is probably Elbow. You have to experience Elbow to understand the intensity of love that the band has. They're from the north, they have this kind of bonhomie, a real banter and a kind of repartee with the audience. It was important for the band that their next stage was right for them, and I completely understood that. When I worked for Peter Saville, I remember he took me aside one day and he said, "Paul, never forget, you are working in a service industry. You are providing a service. Never forget that." And I did. I never forgot it. And I think that's a really, really good bit of information because it keeps you on the straight and narrow. You realise that if the client doesn't like what you do, they're not going to come back. So who's the idiot? The album cover itself is relatively simple, but it's always the tip of the iceberg, isn't it? You know, whenever you see a design, you never really know what's going on below. Basically, because it was Elbow and we really wanted it, we probably over-delivered. I mean, we did loads and loads and loads of ideas. This many ideas. Since Build a Rocket Boys, we've worked on, it's almost like a kind of B-sides and rarities album called Dead in the Boot. And our really big project that we did with the band towards the very end of 2012 was the Elbow box set, where all of their releases, very old releases, were kind of remastered onto heavyweight double vinyl. We had to design the actual box. We had to kind of reformat and repackage their old releases. Projects like that are really exciting. Sometimes when you're working in the music industry, sometimes it's not all about new bands and breaking new acts. Sometimes it's about, you know, reformatting and kind of like old archive and just kind of like making it relevant to new audiences. And then through that as well, we're bringing our own kind of like understanding of the band. Whenever I think of Elbow, I always think of Elbow in terms of kind of very warm colours, kind of like very warm browns, kind of like very warm yellows and oranges. And on the flip side of that, I also think of them in terms of kind of like quite cool colours, almost kind of like smoky blues and kind of almost graphites. They're very kind of like, for me, they're a very organic band. And I think things like the colours and the references down to their choice of typography, they're very, very heavily into, for example, serifs at the moment, and everything is lowercase, like absolutely everything. But what I like about it is that I like the fact that you can look at anything to do with Elbow and everything's at lowercase. It's just a simple thing, but if you're a designer and it's all about the typography, you notice things like that. Bands like Elbow and the management, really excellent, really lovely management company. The label are fantastic. I get on really well with them, Fiction and Polydor, and it's just this whole kind of like team ethos. And when you're kind of like, you know, you're watching them say at Glastonbury a couple of years ago when they did the Sundown set on Saturday, you know, we were all there with kind of like the press and the label, and it was just a very, very emotional moment because it was almost like our own kind of like celebration of the kind of like the finalisation of the album and how well it had done.